So if it hasn't happened to you yet, don't worry because it will. One day you're going to wake up and the music that you love is suddenly going to be considered old. This is mostly going to be a quick story from me, but I included stories from 4 of my former students who chimed in on this, and so you could get a different idea of what it was like for different generations to experience the same phenomena. So when I was 12 years old, close to 13, I wanted to start getting into playing guitar. And so I had no way to learn at the time. And so a couple of guys came over, each individually at different times, and they tried to teach me how to play. And the funny thing is they were so excited to show me riffs from bands like Steppenwolf, 38 Special, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Steely Dan, those kind of groups. And they had such excitement when they told me, yeah, I'm going to teach you how to play this kind of stuff. But inside I was bumming out a little bit because I thought, I don't want to learn that old guy stuff. I want to learn like Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, Steve Vai, Jason Becker. Artists like that. I don't want to learn something from Skynyrd. And even though I was young and extremely naive, in my mind I actually felt sorry for these guys. I would think like, oh, they don't know what they're missing. I know all this cool music and they're stuck listening to all the music you hear on the classic rock stations. So I ended up learning guitar, and several years after that I began to teach guitar myself. And I found myself teaching out of this local music store, and before I knew it, a whole generation had turned over. And all of a sudden my new students were these young kids. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a great time to teach them my favorite bands and show them what's up. So I asked them what kind of music they liked, because I like to do that. I like to learn what students like so that I can cater some of the lessons towards them playing that style. And they started to list off all these bands. And I think I must have had the deer in the headlights look. I just kind of went into shock because I wasn't recognizing any of these bands. At the time, these bands were pretty new. They were saying stuff like, can I learn something from Evanescence? Or My Chemical Romance? They would say MCR as if I knew what that was. Or they would say, I want to learn something from The Used, or The Strokes, or The Hives, or even bands like Paramore. And I just had this flop sweat, went into a full panic, and I thought, oh man, I'm not relating at all to what they're saying. But I thought I could still relate to these students because maybe I could just name off bands that I thought were pretty modern, the newest bands that I knew of at the time. So I said, are you sure you don't want to learn something from like the Foo Fighters or the Offspring or Tool? And then I thought about it, I'm like, this will get them. Blink 182. And I was expecting for their eyes to light up in recognition, but that never happened. Instead, they said stuff like, yeah, those bands, I think I've heard of them, but they're kind of old school. I could feel my heart hit the floor of the teaching studio. So it was around that time that I finally had to admit that I had become the old man who loves old school music. And then the worst thing happened. The local classic rock station began to play my favorite music. Music that I actually remembered when they were being released. And that's when I instantly felt a couple hairs on my head turn gray. What brought all these memories back to me was yesterday I heard that Blink 182 was going to release a brand new song. And so the idea for this video came up, and it made me remember all the old songs and all the different generations and all the different turnover of favorite bands. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun, instead of just telling my story, if I had 4 of my former students also chime in and give me their, oh my god, I'm old moments. And no, I'm not doing this just to get revenge, because they may have laughed at me back in the day and called my music old, and now they know how it feels. At least I don't think that's why I'm doing it. But anyway, I'm going to read 3 of their responses that they wrote back, and then the 4th one, Billy actually sent me a video response, so we'll play that at the end. So Teresa wrote back first, and I remember when she first started to take guitar lessons, she just wanted to get into music somehow. She used to write lyrics, and she wanted to sing and play guitar, and she had this really cool metallic purple V. I just remember that. Anyway, Teresa says, fun question. Thanks for thinking of me for this. I don't remember the first time that happened, to be honest. However, I deal with this on a daily basis, since I manage a couple of Gen Zers, and they often comment on bands that I love being old all the time. It's an incredibly strange feeling. I still feel like I'm a teenager inside. I think most of us do. So realizing over and over again that bands I love are now touring for their 20-year anniversaries of albums I remember being released is weird. Telling tales of Warped Tours and seeing bands live that have long since broken up brings me a lot of joy. I do have a funny anecdote on this subject. I was working with one of my employees who's 19, and Doin' Time by Sublime came on the store stereo. I love how that rhymed. He turned to me and said, "This is a weird cover of that Lana Del Rey song." I just about died. He had no idea that it was originally by Sublime, and in fact, had never even heard of the band Sublime. That one shook me to the core. The kids don't roll around blasting Sublime after school on nice days anymore. Wild stuff. Okay, I love that response. Jason B says, I don't know if I remember that exact moment, but I did hear someone refer to Blink-182 as classic rock the other day. Like I said earlier in this video, I completely know how that feels, Jason. And I was appalled. If you look at some of their YouTube comments, there's a bunch of people that say, man, I wish I grew up during those times. It doesn't help though that there's a festival/concert called When We Were Young that features all of those bands as well. I also think that the key to a long life is to be British, a rock star, and to do an absurd amount of hard drugs in your 20s. Ozzy and Mick Jagger are living proof. You're probably right, Jason, but I can't personally condone that on my channel. Not being British, the drugs part. And then Maya says, I just remember laughing. I was thinking, well, crap, those old people were actually right about something. Time really does begin to fly, and 10 plus years can feel like yesterday. Very true. And now I am unquestionably that weird old lady to my darling work babies, ages 14 through 20. It is not uncommon for me to make them listen to Alanis or Garbage or That Dog. Just a side note, I still don't know what That Dog is. And I'm mostly okay with being that to them, because at the very least, if I'm not actually teaching them about some kick-ass music their parents neglected to introduce them to, they're at least learning how to be polite and how to humor their elders. And hey, that's important to learn too. All right, here's what Billy has to say.
Hey everyone. So I was just asked by Mike G, the Art of Guitar, and my old music teacher, what it's like to be getting older and have the bands you once considered new to be considered old. Well, makes me feel old. But out of it, when I do get to talk to a younger generation and I get to share my music that I once loved at a younger age with them and they hear it, it is both inspiring to me and even sometimes them if they're open to it. These days, the music market is very oversaturated to a degree. There's a lot of good music out there. It's not to say that's a bad thing that's oversaturated, but there's just a lot of new ideas and an easier way to share it with people. That being said, it came from somewhere. And to be able to share what would be considered old music, whether it's 10 or 15 years ago, to share what those ideas once were and how it developed into what we have today and even the technology we've created, it's inspiring. And to be able to keep that going through the generations, I think is very important. So I appreciate the question, Mike, and happy late birthday.
That was awesome. Okay, so my advice to young people is to not dismiss, even though you probably will, don't dismiss older music just because it seems ancient and, it's in the past, it's not important anymore. It'll most likely come around, and it has been lately. Like Metallica's Master of Puppets and Kate Bush just got a huge boost in popularity with the young kids just through Stranger Things. And then also Blink-182, like I talked about earlier, just released a brand new song. And I believe in less than a day, it hit over 1 million views. So I feel like there's hope. And all those old man bands that I talked about earlier in the video that I hated when I was a kid, I ended up loving all of those bands eventually. It took me a lifetime, but I got there. In fact, last week I released 2 Beatles-themed videos on my channel. And back in my heavy metal days, I would have never imagined I would end up loving the Beatles as much as I do. And it really does seem like through technology, the communication that we have these days, and also the entertainment that we have, a lot of people are being exposed to older music, and the younger generations are picking up on it way quicker than my generation ever did. So once again, that gives me hope, and it gives all us old people a good feeling, I guess. All right, that was fun. I loved making this video. It was great getting a hold of my former students and just seeing how they're doing and getting their take on that "oh crap, I'm old" moment that we all will have eventually. But if you have your own story, I would love to read about it. Go ahead and leave it in the comments section and I'll check it out. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.